Okay, guys, I have the Soyence question after action report. It is currently year 6,328 of the Kali Yuga under the day of Tyr under the month of, I forget the Greek god's name for November. But, anyways, uh, going off the comments on the last Soyence question, it appears that the Anatolian element and the non European descent element and the element of people on the bagel payroll or an active agent for the bagels is much grander than previously thought. I thought it was roughly half of the sphere was that. It appears maybe more than that, maybe 60, 65%, but that's a whole different topic for itself. Um, the Soyence question, though, one thing I feel like I didn't get my argument out enough or my point across on what Soyence is and my contention with it. Uh, my main issue with Soyence, is not science in itself. Like, you can get into the nitty gritty about the philosophical aspects of science or the methodological parts of it. But my issue with quote unquote the science, because there's science and then the science, Soyence, is that it's treated as like a quasi religious institution. Also, too, they're not really scientific in their methods because a lot of these studies aren't replicable, especially stuff like sociology or a lot of the biomedical studies as well aren't really replicable. Like they don't control for certain factors, or like their controls are just flawed, and they actively deem anybody who uses like either the same methods they do or follows the actual scientific method and comes to a differing conclusion or has a contradictory result. They'll just call it like pseudoscience, for example, or they just ignore it. Or if it contradicts some theory they have, instead of like, all right, well, let's like rebuild this from the ground up, they're just like, well, we're going to keep the exact same theory, but we're just going to have this little side argument on like why this doesn't matter, Chud. It really is just a theocratic system where uh, the publishers are the priest, and if you question it, you're basically a heretic. And they don't really have explanations. Like, they make these assumptions based off their theory and act like it's just law, that it's factual, and you're ridiculous to question it. And one thing I would use for this is just, I think, an example is Darwinism, in that uh, they claim to know the origin of life, and they claim to know how transspeciation works, but the only part of it that we can actually observe is natural selection, and it doesn't explain either of those. All it really tells you is that animals adapt to their environment. Or I'm not going to get into the flat Earth uh, thing, but even with space, for example, uh, let's just go with the assumption that it's real and all that, and things like black holes, for example, have never been observed. Uh, Also, too, we just don't have any direct observations or experience or anything of how gravity can bend time. Uh, it's just a theoretical thing, but they act like that's true and then build their entire world model off of it, or universal model off of it. And anybody that comes with a differing idea is just kicked out or disregarded. It's like electric universe theory, in which I'm not here to advocate for that, but it's just a differing idea. But yeah, that's really all I wanted to say. That was just my point, is that they're not scientific. They're ultimately using this to enhance their ideology that they're pushing. But anyways, guys, I hope y'all are doing well and y'all take it easy. That's all I really just wanted to spill out, because I feel like I didn't really get my stance out enough on it in my contention. Anyways, guys, I'll see y'all.